So this live stream is all about shelter building and the basics of it, and we will post it as a full YouTube video once we're done, so you can always watch this again. And we come out once in a while and just do these live streams. So if you're interested, you can always tune in, and we'll answer all your questions. So please comment, and we'll look at them. And yeah, so hey Dylan, first things
Yeah,
first.
not to be confused, I'm Dylan. The guy with the hat is Dennis.
Yeah. And so we're twins, if you can't tell. Here, check it. Do we look alike? So Dylan, when you're building a shelter, like you go out into the woods or in the desert or wherever you are, what is your first thing that you're gonna do when you try and like build a shelter?
I think first thing is location. Location is your biggest, most important part of shelter building. And there's a few pieces to location. Depends how long you're out for, right? But you want to look at building your shelter where near the material that you're going to be using. So obviously not like out in the middle of a plain and you have to schlep all your wood out there, right? You want to build in the forest where there's a bunch of wood, a bunch of debris, duff, leaves for insulation, right? Near that, so you don't have to drag it super far. It saves you so much time, so much work, so much effort.
And then if you're sitting a long time, probably near water or like kind of that stuff as well. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. If you're near water or if you have a good near a pond or if you're going to be gathering food or something, you find like where next to a berry patch or a meadow that has a bunch of wild carrots and stuff in it, right? So location is important. Also, if you're worried about being cold, divots, so like little gullies, low points, holes, anything like that is gonna attract the cold air in the evening because the cold air sinks. So if you're in a ravine, a valley, near water is often also cooler. All the cold air will sink there, and if you're just walking, you will notice it. And there's these little microclimates. You could walk 100 feet, and it'll be like you go down into a little gully. It'll be super cold. Like you will see your breath, right? And then you come back out of that little gully or dip or ditch or whatever it is, and then it'll be a lot warmer, right? Your goosebumps go away and stuff. So that's one thing to look at. And also in those low places, if it rains, those are the first places that fill up with water. So that's that's also not the best location. Somewhere that drains water out is awesome, and won't collect the water. What else?
And then one thing I'd add on to that is also like protection from weather. So if you build it underneath like a pine tree, the pine tree or the fir tree or the cedar tree, it wicks the water away. So if you're going up underneath that tree, that's like your first shelter already, that tree, right? So it's wicking all that water out. It's helping to block the wind a little bit and that. So just like also that's like almost your first shelter is like the tree that you're under or like up against a cliff.
You'll notice when it starts raining, if it's dry out, right, and it starts raining, not like super heavy downpour, but let's say a good drizzle, like a rain, right? And it's for the first hour or 2 hours, even like after a day of rain, full rain, after a day, you look under those thick trees, it'll be almost dry underneath those thick trees, right? So that's your good indicator. If it's raining, it's like, oh, this is a dry spot, and everything else is wet. That's a good spot to build your shelter because, up against cliffs, or even, super good spot. Look for like natural protection in the environment, like you were saying. And if like the wind's coming from a certain direction or the storm is coming from a certain direction, don't build your opening to that, right?
Yeah.
Of your shelter. Otherwise, it's just going to blow straight in.
Just wondering how hearing the noise. Who's smart enough to go in here?
Yeah. And then the other thing is like with your location is dead trees, right? So if you're building it and it's like windy or storms coming in and that's why you're building a shelter, and if it's that tree can potentially fall if it gets wet, right? Then the ground loosens up, and that tree can fall even without wind. So just making sure you're not in the path of any hazards, right? If it's snowing out, not like where a path of like the snow avalanche would come down. Just
Yeah,
being a
yeah.
little bit aware about the surroundings and the potential hazards
Even
that you create.
even like a dead branch, right? Um, if the tree might be healthy, but there's a dead branch, if it snows, right, could come down, or for any reason that could come down.
Yeah.
I've seen trees fall with no wind, nothing at all. Just so yeah. Um,
Sweet.
so let's say there's a few different types of shelters, right? And there's similar principles to building most shelters, right? Do you want to talk to us about maybe that basic principle of any shelter building, like the few steps that you should take?
Yeah. So when I start building a shelter, I look for a couple things in the area. Um, I look for like branches, and then I look for like insulation. So that could be like leaves, that could be moss, could be that kind of stuff. And then yeah, I look. Those are pretty much essential things I'm looking for close by because that's what I need a lot of. So I'm going to start out with one bigger, longer pole, and this is going to be for all shelters, right? And that's going to be your ridge line or your main pole. And then I'm going to take shorter
Support
sticks.
beam,
What?
like a support beam.
Yeah. So that's going to go down the entire length of the shelter. And then I run smaller sticks or branches off the sides, kind of creating like a rib cage, you know? So that's like your classic lean to would just be a beam going across the top, and then you line one side with sticks. You can take it a step further, and you can then line both sides of that ridge with sticks, and then you're covered from both sides and have like one little opening. Um, and if you're interested in this stuff, if you're watching it all, you can comment, and then we can like actually create a video, a YouTube video, showing it. Right? Kind of hard to describe, but so then you create those ribs, and then the next thing that I do is um, get if you can in a healthy way, collect some live branches. So the best is from like low hanging cedar trees, low hanging like branches from like cedar trees, spruce, firs. Firs are really good.
Any needle tree, right?
Like some type of needle tree, right? And then so it could be mostly live, and then I lay those on the next layer. So first comes like the rib cage and like the bare bones, and then you add that stuff on top. And then lastly, I take a bunch of just dead needles, dead leaves, moss, whatever I can find, and just throw a bunch of that on top. Get bark if there is a bunch of downed trees, especially like any of those like needle trees like I was talking about. The bark peels off pretty good around those dead trees. So you can peel the bark off and then essentially use that as shingles as a layer to keep it waterproof. I like to make like the roof or whatever that is that's coming down at a 45-degree angle because that wicks the water off the best. If it's steeper than that, then yeah, it wicks the water off, but then you have no room inside the shelter because like it's too like vertical. And if it's too flat, you have a lot of room inside the shelter, but the water is just gonna pool on that roof. It's not gonna run off quick enough. It's just gonna just flow and drip through your shelter onto you. The other thing I like to look at is a potential for fire. And if I'm gonna make a fire, um, like how can I get the most heat out of that fire with using that shelter, right? So if I make a very narrow door to the shelter and I build the fire outside, that heat's not going to really penetrate into the shelter. So if you're using a fire to like keep yourself warm all night, um, just be aware of how that heat is going to be like able to get onto you. So like that's like a lean-to is just like one wall, and then you can build the fire so then it reflects off that wall onto you.
And
Like
then
again,
also,
we can show this in a normal YouTube video, so it makes a little more sense.
if you're building a fire, right, and you're shelters on this side. On the other side, you can do a little rock wall, and then it'll bounce that heat off into your shelter, and they'll hit that lean-to and then bounce back down. So it's kind of like an oven almost, and it gets really
Yeah,
hot.
I agree. Flexible.
Like you'll be toasty if you do it correctly, right? And if the wind's not blowing super hard and blowing rain in and stuff,
Yeah.
you have to do it something else. I think with shelters also, size matters, and smaller the better, right? Smaller the better. If you have a huge shelter, it's a lot of materials that you have to schlep. It's a lot more work, especially for one person. If you have a lot of people, you need to make it bigger, or a few, medium ones. And you have a lot of people, it makes, building faster and easier. But if you're by yourself, small, like just big enough for yourself. Imagine like a one person tent, you should just be able to get in.
Yeah, like
and look,
you don't need to sit up inside. You don't need to stand up inside. You don't need
yeah,
to be luxury. You're trying to stay warm overnight, and you're not like chilling reading a book. This is more like a survival setting. You can, if you have time and you want to, build it bigger. But
like
yeah,
that's like bushcraft stuff.
yeah. Um,
Flooring.
the other one, a prime example of that is just the duff pile, right? So you just rake together as many pine needles as you can, as many leaves as you can, like dry leaves, and you get like a pile like 6, 7 feet tall, 5 feet wide, just as much as you can, and you crawl into the middle of that. And even if it drizzles, you'll still be dry in the middle.
Oh, it's so
Just
warm.
pretty much covering yourself in a mound of pine needles, and that keeps you really warm. It's not comfortable, but you're gonna survive.
It can be.
Yeah, but like you just laying in a thing of pine needles with your head sticking out. But that brings me to a great point. And then after building that shelter, once I get that all waterproof and set how I want to, and I don't see any like holes or gaps in, like I'll crawl into the shelter and look if I see any light, and if I see light, I'll go put bark or more pine needles on that hole, and then what I do is just line the bottom, so inside the shelter, with a bunch of just debris. So it could be pine needles, it could be dead leaves. One I really like to do is just cut low hanging branches again from those needle trees, like fir trees are the best, and then put those live branches inside the shelter to get me off the ground, right? Because if I'm laying on the ground, the ground is wicking all that warmth from my body is going into the ground. So I want to get space off the ground, right? And that's essentially what, when you go camping, that's your Z-Light pads, your foam pads, your blow-up pads. That's what it's doing. It's giving you a gap in between the ground and you, so it doesn't suck all your heat away. And I like to
Also to
go,
be comfy.
yeah, and then you'll be more comfy too. I like to go like 6, 8, 10 inches if I can, of just pure debris. Because when I lay on that, it's gonna flatten down to like an inch. So like I'd go like 8 inches of just debris, like pine needles, and it's gonna flatten down throughout the night. So make sure you have like a massive amount of like your floor in there.
And like another good rule of thumb I like to do is with anything shelter building is like you think you have enough, times it by 2. You think you have enough on the roof, put that much again on top. You think you have enough on the floor, put that time again that much, right? And you think you have enough firewood to last you the night, right? Because you have to keep stocking the fire so it doesn't go out. You think you have enough, times that wood pile by 2. Because I've ran through a lot. Like if you're keeping a fire going, you run through a lot of wood, depending on what wood it is, right? You run through it faster, and
If it's like if it's pine, you run through that stuff real quick.
yeah,
Um,
and smaller branches you run through faster, right? So you have to keep putting more on. So like a big wood pile is like, imagine, I don't know, a sofa almost. That might be a little bit big, but like that much, like the size of a sofa, you want your wood pile to be like almost that big,
I would say like
right?
4 feet tall by like 5 feet long, just single stacks, and it's like one, right, and that might get you through the night. But it's a lot of wood, yeah.
You'd rather have more than not enough.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Dylan, with this shelter building, are there any tools involved? Are there any theories that you can do without tools? If I get lost and I'm just in my board shorts and my t-shirt, can I build this
Oh, you in
shelter?
San Diego? Yeah. So obviously, like the method that you were talking about is taking the lower branches, trimming those off. You need a knife. It's easiest. You can break them off, but it's the most sustainable for the tree and for you and your energy. If you had like a little pocket saw or even a knife, you want to cut those branches like right by the tree trunk. You don't want to leave a lot sticking out. And if you're gonna take those branches, only take a third of the tree, the height, and that's kind of like pruning. It helps the tree grow, and it's healthy for the tree. Actually, it's really good for it, and it's good for you, right? That's like a sustainable, generative practice that you can use to for your survival skills. Where it's not just like taking, but you're also giving back. It seems weird. You're taking, but at the same time you're giving back because it creates airflow. It frees the tree up of like those underneath. If there's a fire that comes through, it like not so susceptible to burning. It helps it grow higher. Reduces the risk of mold or disease it has because there's more airflow coming through the bottom and stuff like that, right? So it's actually really good for the tree. But if you don't have any tools, that's gonna be a little bit hard, and it's best just to stick with your dry branches that you can just like jump on, and prop them up on a rock or something, and jump on them, and you can break them like that. And just like your duff, your leaves, your pine needles, your moss, the things that you can collect just with hands that you don't need to do. Like I would do that even if I had a saw, right? Just jump on it and break it. I'm not gonna go like sawing every single piece. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, right? You want to be efficient. You want to be quick. Another way to do it without rope is you can take a branch that's on a tree, right? We said build under a tree. If it's a healthy tree and there's a low branch, pines are really great for this. Specific pines, you can take that branch, and often they're hanging down a little bit like this, and then you build your lean-to on that living branch, right? And then you don't have to that's your ridge pole. You don't have to find a ridge pole. Also, if you have branches that have Ys in them, here, I'm off my phone. I'm gonna try and hold it between my legs. If you have like a Y, if you have a Y like this, you can then stick another branch in like that, right? And then even like stick a third one in and make like a triangle, and that'll hold. Or if you have two Ys, right, and then stick a third one in, you can kind of prop them together, make it and then you make that triangle, your teepee, and that's really really strong, right? And you want to kind of test that on it, pull on it and stuff, but you can have it propped up without using any trees, anything. You can do it in the open just by using those Y twigs, right, and kind of meshing them together at the top. So that's like you don't need any rope, cords, any of that, right? And it's really easy to do.
Yeah, I've
And I would,
definitely built,
and
I've
that's like the
definitely
thing, like
built shelters without using any tools, and I've stayed dry and warm, so it's definitely doable.
yeah, and that's like the thing. It's a lot easier, and you use less materials if you spend like the 2 minutes looking for that Y stick, right? You're gonna spend less time looking for that Y stick and just propping it up, or that ridge pole that's already on a tree, than if you were trying to tie, sticks together and make the ridge pole and do all this fancy stuff with all your tools and saws and hatchets and cutting notches in it and all that stuff. You're spending so much time and so much energy. It's you'd rather walk around for 5 minutes, find a ridge pole that's already up, or find a Y stick, and it's so much quicker, so much more energy efficient.
Yeah.
And of course, this is like just on the fly, right? In the evening, if you're gonna go out practice bushcraft and whatever, you had time, you had supplies, and you're just doing it for fun. That's great. But if you need a shelter quick, if you don't have resources, whatever it may be, just like go simple.
Yeah.
And it pays off to spend time. I'd rather spend half an hour looking for a good spot, right, and like the good ridge pole, than finding the first spot I see, because it's looking for that half an hour and searching for that good spot is going to save you that time. Because if you find a shitty spot, you're gonna be schlepping, and it's gonna take you hours to build that shelter. But if you took half an hour, 45 minutes to find that right spot, it might take you an hour and a half to build that shelter. If you find the first spot, it might take you 2, 3, 4 hours, right, to build that shelter.
And then you might be exposed to the elements. No matter how good you build your shelter, if you build it in the wrong spot or a very bad spot, you're gonna be screwed. Like if you build it in a riverbed in the desert, right? And then it flash floods, well,
Yeah. You cut out a little bit. I can't. Oh, here we go. Um. Okay. That's great. Oh, one other way you can shelter is you can build like a little teepee, right? Just like belly button, chest high. Um, do your two sides of it, right? Make your walls. Fill the entire thing up. Fill it full of debris, and then if you can get like a big branch or like a big piece of bark, you crawl inside and then you put that branch over that third side or that big piece of bark, and then you cover it. Basically, it's your doorway. You cover everything up. You crawl into that big pile, and of course, you're not going to be stretched out. You're going to be into a little ball, right? Kind of curled up on your side or whatever in there, but it's basically that debris pile. But you also have a little bit of a shelter around it to block from the wind or the rain or whatever. And then you don't need a fire. It's super small, super easy.
got
Right.
got the Wi-Fi back.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's another method, like that duff pile, but like inside your shelter. And then you don't need to build like a fire.
Cool. Hey Dylan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If you have any questions, then you can comment and we will respond. And you can ask us questions. And then if you want to, we can also put out like a long form YouTube video showing all this physically how we build shelters out in the woods. So that's always fun. But we'll only do that if you all are inspired and you ask us to, then we'll actually do that. And if no one comments, then we're not really going to post a video soon about shelter building.
Yeah. I'm also excited. I'm here in New Zealand. I've just barely got set up. This is like my second day in the house. Like, you know, and still trying to apply for jobs, but like just got, everything figured out. So I'm really excited to go out into the woods and see, what kind of plants is here. We have some similar, but there's a lot of different stuff here in New Zealand, plants. And so I'm really excited to get out. There's you're not allowed to make fires. None of campgrounds have fire pits. You can't make fires anywhere, really. There's even like in houses, like, your stove in the house where you can make a fire. In a lot of places, that's not allowed. It's pretty strict over here on fire. So, but there's a lot of other things I can do, specifically shelter building. I can even just make a mock fire pit as well, but not make fire in it. So, I'm afraid that a lot, if like the hand drill, bow drill, a lot of that I can do, but I just can't, actually make the fire. I could make the coal blow into flame and turn out. But so I'm excited to get into that. So if you're also excited to see me learning new things in New Zealand, then let me know, and I'll get out there.
Yeah. If you all comment on any of the things that we do, or want it, like, hey, like, how do I do this, or like surfing, or backpacking, or river rafting, or any survival stuff, you comment, and we will definitely get an answer to you, or you'll inspire us to make a video, and then we'll share that link with you. So we really respond well to comments, and your all's ideas. So please reach out. Don't feel afraid.
But if you
Yeah.
do comment, remember you gotta subscribe and turn that bell notification on so that when we post a video about your comment, you're updated.
Oh yeah. Sweet.
Awesome. See ya.
Yeah. Bye.